And speaking of communal gatherings, I needed to understand more about the social organizing of the DSA. So I don't know if this
Democratic
individual is um, great for this, but I haven't heard anything about him or any controversies about him. I've seen like the thumbnails of some of his videos. It seemed to be good. But let's learn together.
Socialists of America is the largest and fastest growing socialist organization in the US. It's been behind some of the most dynamic and controversial politicians in America, but also political
AOC, oh my god. She has good policy. But the fact that she voted to fund the defense force for Israel's bombing campaign, like, come on. It's just give zero equipment to Israel. It's just really unfortunate that she voted for it.
education, union drives, strike funds, and demonstration. But here's the thing, almost nobody understands how DSA really operates, not even some of its own members. As a member of DSA myself, I thought I'd take this video to explain exactly how DSA works so you can make up your own mind about it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how the organization is structured, how the National Convention decides DSA's direction, and where the fiercest debates are happening right now. Plus, I'll map out all the major political factions within DSA on a political compass so you can figure out who's fighting for your vision of socialism. And if you want to guess which caucus I'm a member of, stick around until the end. Part 1. The structure of DSA. Okay, let's talk about how DSA is structured. But before we get into that, we need to clear up some misconceptions first. Most people see DSA and assume that it's just for electoral campaigns or that it's just a watered down social democrat club. Both of those assumptions are incorrect. In reality, DSA is a big tent socialist network. Think of it as a toolbox. Electoral campaigns are one tool in that toolbox, but they're not the only one. Across the country, DSA chapters organize tenants, build rank and file labor campaigns, run direct actions, fight for public power and renewable energy, win student worker unions, lead international solidarity work, and yes, win elections. So what makes DSA really unique? Cool. In my opinion,
including more people to use this toolbox seems like a net positive. It's just good. I like it. I like it a lot.
It's that it contains a wide variety of tendencies, from reformist electoralists to revolutionary Marxists to anarchists and libertarian socialists. In theory, this diversity keeps socialists working together on common goals rather than collapsing everyone into one party line or fracturing them into a million sectarian groups. In practice, is that effective strategy or is it just a recipe for infighting? As with everything in this video, I'll let you be the judge of that. Okay, so before we get any further, let's get some jargon out of the way. Chapters. These are your local teams. Most of the day-to-day work happens here. If you want to organize, find your local chapter. Convention. The big meeting where delegates from chapters vote on major priorities and elect representatives to the National Political Committee. It's the organization's highest authority, and it happens every 2 years. The National Political Committee. The National Political Committee, or the NPC, is the elected body that runs things between conventions. Think of it as the national board. Working groups and commissions. These are national teams which are focused on specific issues like housing, labor, international affairs, etc. This is where campaigns get coordinated, and it's where stuff happens on a national level. Caucuses and slates. These are organized tendencies or electoral teams inside DSA. Caucuses are ongoing political groupings, whereas slates tend to be election-focused. As I said earlier, we'll be going into each caucus in depth later in the video. Local autonomy. If you don't understand this point, you don't understand DSA. I didn't understand it for a long time, and it caused me a lot of frustration when I joined. You should know that DSA chapters are semi-autonomous, which means that what happens locally is yours to influence. Now, while
Does that just mean it's decentralized, where sure, it's all connected at a certain point, but it mostly works with its own local section?
it's nice to have local control, this decentralization can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it allows for chapters to set their own priorities and run their own campaigns according to their own local needs, which is pretty cool. But it also makes national coordination pretty difficult and pretty infrequent. In my experience, chapters don't really talk to each other that much, and they only coordinate campaigns and stuff on like an ad hoc basis. So if you want to do work on a nationwide or international level, you need to join a national working group. Part 2, the National Convention. This next component is one of the most exciting and dynamic parts of DSA, and it's absolutely essential if you want to understand the organization. As I mentioned earlier, the DSA has a national convention every 2 years where delegates decide the direction of the organization. Each chapter elects a certain number of representatives based on their size, and they all duke it out on the convention floor. It can be pretty chaotic, but, that's democracy in action.
Just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a
Oh,
lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very
this is just very, very woke. It's just things like this is what scares people off about leftism. It's like the people who will scold you for being too much in general. It's just not. They're like it's cringy. That's like the main issue. It just tends to be very cringy. It drives people away. So yuck. It gives me the ick.
difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker against name chapter pronouns?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Anyway, that's enough for me. I'll let the delegates speak for themselves. Who am I here with?
Tyler Martin.
Tim Rayner.
How did it feel to be at the DSA convention?
I felt inspired coming away from it. I joined July of last year, and I had little to no hope about where things were going. And that's why I was searching online for an organization, people doing something. And I found the DSA. And all these months and leading up to convention, I've been exposed to now a nationwide group of folks that are doing that work, right? Like they're putting this stuff in. And all the 1,300 people I see, it hit me later that, again, those are just elected representatives. That's some of chapters nationwide that are all putting in this work. So I now have a renewed sense of hope that, like, we can do this.
What is convention like on a day-to-day basis?
It's a lot of early mornings and a lot of late nights. Deliberation, I think, for 3 hours in the morning each day, and then workshops through the afternoon, and then another deliberation block at night.
What were kind of some of the issues that we were voting on?
Big issue is sort of our resolution in our anti-Zionist Palestinian stance. How rigid are we going to be in our demands of our endorsed elected or seeking elected officials?
A big one outside of that is just the party building aspect as a whole. DSA, committed itself to continue party building, to continue mass action, mass movement, continuing to build the DSA as a party. One of the main things that we voted on was to run a presidential candidate by 2028.
There are some that say we should have broken off yesterday, and then there are some who say that's a pipe dream that'll never happen, and we should continue to work within the Democratic Party and get as much gains as we can there. It would be my motivating goal to get us broken apart and be our own standalone party, but I don't think the reality is right now saying that's a hard line right now would get us closer.
That's pretty true. I mean, if the Democratic Party is a husk of what it used to be, or even if the Democratic Party is just a hollowed out shell, what it kind of cosplays to be, I think the DSA should be the ones to take the reins from the inside, because Democrats won't really fight back. If they show they don't fight back to the Republicans, what makes them think they're going to fight back against their own constituents? It becomes stable again. Okay, we're good. We're back in action.
to our goals.
Okay, so you mentioned there was a bit of a contentious debate around the
completely
party
forgot what I was talking
question,
about
and I
before.
imagine there was contentious debate around a lot of aspects of convention. Can you just speak to the nature of what it was actually like to try and get a decision made in a room where there's literally like hundreds of people who all have...
Oh yeah, I was saying how the DSA should take over the Democratic Party from the inside out. Because it doesn't seem to be that difficult
their own.
unless you have people like Richie Torres who take money from AIPAC. Then yeah, I could see the difficulty. But people are starting to sway away from support of Israel. The only people who are really supporting Israel are those who are taking money from AIPAC, which is really dumb. And I mean, it's just good for money if you're willing to sell your soul for a measly pay.
Own vision of what socialism should be and how we should proceed.
There has to be a structure, and you have to stick to it. Whichever chair was running it at the time was paramount to that. Like, they had to be on their job, and I think they all did a great job ultimately. So when people would start to kind of make claims that got the whole crowd riled up and booing, that, you know, I mean, you'd have to quickly get them back in order, right?
It was always 1 for, 1 against, and just alternating until we get to 3. We follow Robert's rules, which is pretty standard parliamentary practice. These people within a DSA context, I may like heavily disagree with them and maybe like even dislike them, but like outside of DSA context, like these are some of the best people I've ever met. Like even the worst side of like DSA is still some of the best people I've ever been around. And so like this is a massive tent and a massive organization, and we all have to work together ultimately.
Yeah.
Celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, diversity is our strength. Yeah. And finally, a politician I can get a freaking beer with. Am I right? I want you guys to be able to like speak to the people.
Brother.
What advice do you have to somebody as people who are actually doing the work and not just lurking in YouTube comment sections criticizing people? What do you have to say?
We have to work together. You have to go find comrades who are willing to work with you, that you're willing to work with, and to just put in the effort with them. I used to be the person that sat there online and scrolled the YouTube comments and got depressed all day. But, you know, now being in the DSA, I get involved. I get to go knock doors. I get to see people and shake hands. That work is just life-changing, you know.
But Tyler, if I work with other people, then I might disagree with them.
Yeah, and that's okay. You know, it's okay to disagree with people, and it's okay to have comradely debate. This is why we have democracy.
In my moments of reflection from convention, I remembered a story from my youth, from high school time, where I went over to a friend's house, and there was a couple of other friends there, and they said, "Oh, thankfully you're here. We need help. Steve's car's broke down. There's not enough of us to get it over the curb, right? We need, and I go in there and I help them and we get it over the curb. And of course, for years I bragged about, oh, all they needed was me, right? All they needed was me. And then I realized later they didn't need me. They needed one more comrade. You know what I mean? One more comrade is what they needed to literally get over that hump. And that's what we need here, right? We need one more comrade. So if you're waiting, if you're on the fence, we need you here. We can put you to work.
All right. Yeah, Tim, Tyler, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you want a retrospective article in the 2025 convention, along with a lot of other resources that will help you understand the DSA better, check the description of this video. Part 3. The key debates. As you can imagine, all this local variance and ideological diversity leads to a lot of different ideas about what the organization should be and where it should go. So in this section, I'm going to break down some of the key debates within DSA and the major perspectives on those debates so you can see where you stand. Then we'll talk about DSA's major caucuses and find out their position on these issues. The party question. All socialists pretty much agree. In order to win improvements in the lives of working people and increase class consciousness, we need to have two things: an independent working class party and a strong labor movement. However, DSA members have radically different ideas of how to get there. So let's discuss each of these issues in order, starting with the party question. When it comes to party building, there are 4 commonly discussed options. First, there's the dirty break strategy, which advocates strategically running candidates on the Democratic ballot line in the short term while building independent party infrastructure in the meantime. Supporters of the dirty break strategy argue that third parties are not currently viable in America and often advocate for reforming the American electoral system to pave the way for further struggles. This is the dominant view in DSA. Second, there's the party surrogate strategy, which advocates for DSA to operate as a faction inside the Democrat Party with more internal discipline for socialists in office. Ultimately, the goal of the party surrogate model is to build independent capacity and eventually splinter off from the Democratic Party. Third, there's the realignment strategy, which seeks to shift the Democratic Party left over the long term, with the goal of making socialists the dominant faction within the party. Supporters of this plan are likely to favor looser electoral discipline. The goal is to get socialists in office and then go from there. Fourth, there's the clean break strategy, which is pretty much exactly the opposite of the realignment approach. Supporters of the clean break strategy want to immediately sever ties with the Democratic Party and exclusively run third-party candidates. They argue that there's no way to ensure working-class independence or the integrity of socialist politicians while working within a capitalist party. However, not everyone sees party building as a priority. There's also the dual power strategy, which is favored by the more anarchistic and libertarian socialist elements within DSA. Instead of focusing on electoralism, they want to build counterpower institutions outside the state, which will gradually build the leverage necessary to overthrow capitalism and possibly the state itself, or at least that's the thinking. The party question isn't just a matter of theoretical dispute either, because party building strategy determines which candidates we back, which standards we hold those candidates to, and where we run those candidates. You know, there's like a lot of key questions that come out of this. Is associating with the Democrats hurting our credibility with working people, or would splitting with them doom us to electoral irrelevance? Can we even call ourselves socialists if we're working within a capitalist party? How strictly should we discipline our elected officials? If holding candidates to a certain standard means forcing them to take a position that might lose them the election, is that worth staying ideologically pure? Let me know in the comments below. Labor strategy. As I said earlier, socialists broadly agree that a vibrant labor movement is essential to building working class power and consciousness. But how do we actually build union power? There's two main schools of thought on this. The rank and file strategy means socialists join workplaces as workers and build power from the shop floor. Whereas the staff-centered model means getting socialists into positions of union leadership in order to combat the dominant form of business unionism, which is overly conciliatory to management. So, do we need to become union members ourselves and organize from the bottom up, or do we need to join union leadership and steer it in a more confrontational direction? Probably both are important, but which model you emphasize will depend on your ideological perspective.
I mean, couldn't you just apply all of it? You know, if one thing doesn't work, try out the next thing. Because it takes more than one strategist, I would assume.
Socialism. Adapting to climate change is probably one of the most pressing issues in the 21st century. Plus, the climate crisis is one of the places where the contradictions and the failings of the capitalist system are exposed most sharply. And because of that, it's critical to articulate a socialist alternative on this issue. So, what does this eco-socialist alternative look like? Again, there are two main schools of thought on this. First, we have the Green New Deal, which proposes massive public investment, nationalized renewable energy, and green union jobs. This
was insane for me. Back when I first started actually learning about politics, I had heard about the Green New Deal from AOC, and at the time I was a Republican gremlin. I would not move from the idea that a Green New Deal was possible. And now looking back, I really do regret my position on it, and it's crazy too, because in elementary I had the President's Project, where you would pick a president and then pick policies that you would enjoy, and I had picked Theodore Roosevelt or Teddy Roosevelt. And he had created the first New Deal, first New Deal. And looking back, and this was in high school when I was a Republican gremlin. but I made that first project when I was in elementary. And it's just very interesting to see on my own behalf the changes that one would make, especially when you learn new things.
Was popularized by AOC and is the official position of the DSA. Second, we have degrowth, a school of thought that advocates actively scaling back unnecessary production, consumption, and work. Degrowthers point out that metrics such as GDP growth do not accurately measure quality of life, and that we need to move away from the idea of economic growth as a standard of human well-being. So both these schools of thought aim to address the climate crisis, but they have radically different proposals for doing it. One of them wants to build our way out of the climate crisis, whereas another one wants to challenge the logic of growth itself. Now, I personally am skeptical of degrowth, if I'm just being totally honest. I think it would be a very, very tough sell politically to tell people that we want less, but this perspective does seem to be gaining steam on the left. We'll see how far that trend goes. If you want to see my proposal for fighting climate change, you can watch this video right here that I just put out. Internationalism. This is a big question on the left more broadly. How should we think of non-Western powers such as China and Russia? And how should we think about actually existing socialist states like Cuba, the USSR, or China? There are two main views on this issue. There's third campism and campism. Third campism has its origins in Trotskyist groups, which rejected both the capitalist first camp as well as the Stalinist second camp, instead opting to side with the international proletariat third camp. So basically the first world, second world, third world distinction. Historically, a third campus perspective meant being critical of actually existing social...
I keep hearing these different versions of communism and socialism from like Marxist-Leninists, anarchists, and Maoists. And if I want to continue learning about these leftist subjects, I really need to learn about those as well. I'll probably make a video, because I used to make videos about different subjects, and I might do one just for me specifically, at least, to learn and really delve into it much deeper.
States like the USSR. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, it has shifted to mean being critical of Russia, China, Iran, and their allies, as well as the West. On the other hand, campists believe that Western imperialism represents the primary threat to global liberation. So for them, the third campist equivocation between the West and non-Western powers inadvertently serves the interests of Western imperialism. They believe that the actions of other states are not really relevant to American socialists, and some of them may even be outright supportive of states like China, believing that it is now the global standard bearer for socialism. Palestine solidarity. DSA actually began as a Zionist organization, believe it or not, but it has moved decisively away from that position over time. Since 2017, it has become explicitly anti-Zionist and pro-BDS, with Palestinian solidarity becoming a major priority in the aftermath of October 7th. This has led to a lot of debates about discipline and endorsements for elected officials. You know, how strictly do we want to hold our politicians to a pro-Palestinian stance? It's also led to debate about what a humane resolution to this genocide would actually look like. Most DSA members favor a one-state solution, where apartheid is dismantled and Palestine becomes a democratic state with equal rights for all citizens. However, some members view a two-state solution along the lines of the current UN-recognized borders as the only realistic outcome. Still others argue for Palestinian self-determination, asserting that it's not our place to decide what a resolution of this conflict should look like, and instead we should leave it to the Palestinians themselves to decide what they want to do.
That one makes the most sense. I would assume that I'm making an assumption here. When Zoran Mamdani said that he would agree to Palestinians should live equally to Israelis, I assume that's the first option with the one-state solution. But I also keep hearing that the most likely outcome is the two-state solution. But to me, at least, the third solution for the Palestinian sovereignty, to where they make their own state, or make their own outcome, makes the most sense to me. But I still need to learn more about the history.
Major debates within the DSA. Hopefully this section got you thinking critically about these issues, not as an ideologue, but as an organizer. Because on the internet, you can make all sorts of declarations and you never need to back them up. It's totally frictionless. But in real life, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. Your decisions have real stakes, and they often involve complex trade-offs. Part 4, Meet the Caucuses. Here's where DSA gets really interesting and honestly kind of messy. Because unlike most political organizations, DSA doesn't just have members and leaders with one party line. It has caucuses, groups of members who come together around a shared vision for what DSA should do and how it should do it. They publish statements, run slates of candidates at conventions, and launch their own campaigns inside the organization. Some of them even have their own publications. Now, you might be wondering, isn't that chaotic? Yes, definitely. But it's also what makes DSA unique, because this is how debates that would normally split the left into a dozen different tiny sects actually play out inside one large organization. So let's walk through some of the biggest caucuses you'll hear about and what they actually stand for. By the end of this section, you'll probably start to notice which caucuses you'd vibe with and which ones you absolutely clash with. And just for fun, I'm going to plot each caucus on a political compass. On the x-axis, we have caucuses that want to win power through reforms and electoralism versus ones that take a more revolutionary approach. On the y-axis, we have the campist spectrum. Up top, caucuses that are sympathetic to actually existing socialist states and favor more structured organization. And on the bottom, we've got caucuses that take a more independent or third worldist approach and favor non-hierarchical, horizontalist forms of organization.
I'm assuming that the anarchism would fall underneath the where was that one? Would fall under revolution and non-aligned. And you would have like the how would I say, the most safest option where at least people get impacted by reform. I don't know how to word it correctly. Forgive me if I say anything stupid. I'm on my journey of learning here.
Caucuses that take a more independent or third worldist approach and favor non-hierarchical, horizontalist forms of organization. These placements are supposed to give you a rough idea of where the caucuses stand. So if I don't put them exactly where you would, take it easy on me, okay? Bread and Roses. Bread and Roses is a Marxist caucus with a rank-and-file labor focus. Internationally, they have a third campist vision, but they also reject the horizontalist organizing tactics favored by more anarchistic elements of the DSA, which puts them in the middle of the campist axis. When it comes to the question of reform versus revolution, BNR again tries to strike a balance. On one hand, BNR rejects, quote, a strategy of gradually winning reforms which never seeks to break with the capitalist system. But on the other hand, they also reject, and I quote, a strategy of insurrection which mistakenly seeks to adopt a model from vastly different historical conditions and apply it to our situation today. Instead, they espouse what they call the democratic road to socialism. The goal is to create a mass movement that can force elites to make concessions and eventually remove them from power by rebuilding a labor movement as well as working to create a working class party. This strategy of non-reformist reforms, again, places them near the center. So if you're the kind of person who thinks vote blue no matter who isn't cutting it anymore, but you're also not ready to start making Molotovs, then Bread and Roses might feel like home. Communist Caucus. The Communist Caucus, or Commie Caucus for short, is a multi-tendency communist and Marxist caucus that emphasizes spade work, which means an outward-facing, mass work approach which promotes militant labor unions, tenant unions, workers' association, and other forms of sustained local organizing. Its work has led to the creation of the Emergency Tenant Organizing Committee within DSA's Housing Justice Commission, which serves to organize tenant unions and support other tenant organizers. So if you want to get your hands dirty and engage with your community, the Communist Caucus might be the way to go. Emerge. Emerge is a multi-tendency caucus influenced by, and stay with me here, autonomous Marxist and Dutch-German left communist thinking. As their name suggests, they want to create an emergent strategy that draws from global liberation movements while adapting to present circumstances. While they believe in the importance of running socialists for office, Emerge emphasizes that electoralism is only one part of politicizing all aspects of life. So if you're someone who values ideological diversity, curiosity, and democratic culture over dogma, then Emerge might be right for you. Groundwork. Groundwork is an eco-socialist caucus which supports a party surrogate strategy and favors looser electoral discipline. Some of its members were involved in the Build Public Renewals Act campaign in New York, which is considered the largest Green New Deal and public renewables legislative victory in U.S. history, although progress has stalled on that legislation within the New York state government. Groundwork generally sees electoral representation and legislative organizing as being key ways to build towards socialism. So if you're looking for practical campaigns and legislative victories, Groundwork might be a good place to start. Libertarian Socialist Caucus. Not everyone in DSA wants to go through elections or central committees. The Libertarian Socialist Caucus pushes for direct democracy, horizontalist organizing, and a politics rooted in anarchist traditions. They want to build power from the ground up without falling into the traps of bureaucracy. They view electoral work as a distraction, instead focusing on building dual power through co-ops, unions, and mutual aid. The LSC was once one of the most powerful caucuses within DSA, but its membership has declined dramatically in recent years. If you think power corrupts and you're excited by horizontalist organizing, this caucus is probably your vibe. Marxist Unity Group. The Marxist Unity Group, aka MUG, are an orthodox Marxist democratic centralist socialist caucus. The caucus's primary plank is the overthrow of the current American constitutional order and the foundation of a new democratic socialist republic, with a majoritarian democratic system in its place. They want to use elections strategically while committing to the abolition of institutions which limit popular democracy, such as the Senate, the Electoral College, the Supreme Court, and the independent presidency. MUG has been particularly vocal about its support for restricted electoral discipline and its hard lines against Zionism and decentralization. If you're drawn to theory, analysis, and ideological sharpness, Marxist Unity Group might be where you land. Red Star. Red Star is DSA's Marxist-Leninist caucus. They oppose both horizontalism and autocracy, advocating instead for big tent socialist organizing, with a central pole agitating for revolutionary Marxism within a Democratic Workers' Party. The caucus supports strong elected discipline under a party surrogate model while explicitly opposing third campism. Red Star members tend to be more favorable towards actually existing socialist states than other caucuses. San Francisco DSA has also seen significant Red Star involvement in various campaigns, such as the push for a vacancy tax and for the unionization of Anchor Brewing. If you have a soft spot for 20th century socialism and appreciate organizational discipline, then Red Star might be your caucus. Reform and Revolution. Reform and Revolution, or R&R for short, is a Trotskyist caucus formed in 2019 by former members of Socialist Alternative, the largest Trotskyist party in the U.S. The caucus emphasizes a dirty break from the Democratic Party to form a new socialist party, as well as a rank-and-file labor strategy, democratic central planning of the economy, and some third campus positions. Reform and Revolution diverges from Socialist Alternative in its support of rank-and-file organizing over staff-centered red unionism, it not practicing democratic centralism, and supporting a dirty break rather than a clean break from the Democratic Party. So if you're a fan of Leon Trotsky, then look no further than Reform and Revolution. Socialist Majority Caucus. Socialist Majority Caucus, or SMC for short, is a moderate reformist caucus focused on electoral...
I was not expecting a Sam Hyde mention. Oh my god, I need to clean my eyes. That was a jump scare. Oh my god.
organizing. SMC is generally aligned with groundwork on most issues,
God.
except SMC places less emphasis on Green New Deal or eco-socialism in its actual organizing efforts. SMC most closely follows the realignment strategy and supports slightly looser discipline for elected officials than groundwork does. Most of its activity involves canvassing and phone banking for DSA-endorsed candidates for public office. SMC views reformism as the most practical route to moving towards socialism today and bringing mass appeal to the DSA via electoral representation. If you're concerned less with ideological purity than you are with immediate electoral victory, then socialist majority is your caucus, the independents and the wild cards. And finally, there's everyone else. There are many other slates, caucuses, and groups within DSA that I didn't have time to cover. In addition to the major caucuses, there are tons of smaller caucuses that represent different ideological tendencies, like Mass Work, which is a Maoist caucus, or caucuses that are formed around single issues, like the Anti-Identity Politics Winter Caucus, or the newer Caracal Caucus, which is focused on degrowth. It's also worth noting that unlike the ossified American political system, shots fired, DSA's internal dynamics are constantly evolving. Caucus's powers wax and wane, new ones are formed, and old ones die out. If you read the article that I mentioned earlier, you'll totally see what I mean. And finally, not everyone is in a caucus. Plenty of DSA members stay independent, dipping into debates, sometimes voting with different blocs depending on the issue. These folks often swing the balance at convention. So, whether you think caucuses are a sign of healthy internal democracy or proof that DSA is fractured and fighting itself, you can't understand the organization without understanding them. You might be wondering, the big question, what caucus is Harper O'Connor a part of? Well, none of them. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm further left.
I was actually more thinking which one would I fall into. That is so many. Oh my god. It feels like they're all splintered off. They're about to splinter off. God, I don't know what I would choose if I had to fall into one. I do like the idea of hollowing out the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party does not like to fight. The Democratic Party is just absolute yellow-bellied individuals who bend the knee to whoever shows any bit of power. I would guess I'm more in favor of, like I said, hollowing at the Democratic Party, taking over the reins, and then removing those who want to continue a status quo. Would that be like the Dutch, the Marxist Dutch ones? It seems like it would fall into the category of reform. Huh. I'll have to think about this one.
Than all of them. No, I'm just kidding. Back when I got my politics from the internet, I used to think that I had it all figured out. Online, your social currency is based on like whoever can be the loudest, who's the most radical, who's the most ideologically esoteric. I'm sure you've seen these people. I call them Discord communists. But anyway, once I started doing work in the real world, I understood that all of my theorizing didn't mean much at all. And honestly, that realization was kind of refreshing. In real life, you're defined by the relationships you form with people. You're defined much more by what you do than by what is in your head. And that's why I think that DSA has managed to move forward as an organization despite its massive ideological diversity. And despite the very real conflicts between those ideological tendencies, because fundamentally this is an organization of people who are doing the work. That work binds us together in a way that you're not going to experience on the internet. So yeah, I'm not part of a caucus, and I don't put too much pressure on myself to define my ideological tendency these days. I'm not trying to sell you my brand of socialism. I'm not even trying to sell you DSA. Heck, I'm not even trying to sell you socialism. Like, honestly, I'm just trying to sell you action. Get involved, see what your community needs, form relationships with more experienced organizers, and learn from them. Cross the river by feeling the stones. A better world is possible.
A federal program dating back to the New
Wow.
Deal that provides food
What a video. Oh, that puts so much to think about. Just based on the outside, it looks like the DSA is starting to form a more cohesive idea. It just seems very splintered. Hmm. I guess I wouldn't really know my alignment with the DSA until I start like going out and doing more community action. I guess it's only in the future that I really know the real answer.